Hey guys, my name is Haley and today I'm going to be filming a kind of weird video. I don't do a lot of discussion videos on here, but I feel like this one's somewhat necessary since I feel like I've been hinting at it all year with a lot of my videos and the fact that I have not been reading as much as I normally do. And there's a big reason for that, and I finally come to terms with wording it how I want to explain it. So we're going to get into that. And that is the topic of enjoying your hobbies while in a pandemic and how that looks a little bit different from what enjoying your hobbies would usually look like in precedented times. I keep seeing the joke everywhere of you know what I miss? Precedented times, because everything right now is unprecedented times and we don't know what to do with it. And we're really bad at dealing with it, especially in America. So I feel like the first subject with that is to realize that you are in a pandemic and what you're doing is keeping other people safe and you're keeping yourself safe and not spreading this virus. And because of that, because you're probably going to be in your house, or you should be in your house a lot more than you would have been previously, especially if you're an extrovert like me, to realize that we are still in a pandemic and that your hobbies and your reading, which falls under the category of hobbies, any sort of hobbies that you had at this point a year into the pandemic, is gonna look different. In my case, the biggest difference, especially in the last 2 or 3 months, has been audiobooks, because I used to listen to them a lot when I was nannying for a family that I do not currently nanny for, because the mom is working from home and she's able to watch one of the babies by herself. And so that time period in which I would listen to audios a lot has been taken from me, and I've decided to spend the time period that I have at home after work with the other family that I nanny for doing things that aren't audiobook reading. That just has not come back into my habits yet. I'm also a firm believer in the fact that you should not force yourself to do a hobby or you won't enjoy it anymore. This is something me and Kate talk about all the time, is to let yourself enjoy other things and don't get caught up. Specifically with booktube, I feel like a lot of booktubers have this happen to them and they call it a reading slump when they just don't feel like reading. And I was like, it's not that you don't feel like reading, it's that you're focused on wanting to enjoy something else and you're not letting yourself, because you identify as a reader, especially on booktube. It's sometimes hard to make content if you're not actively reading as much as you normally would, because there's not a ton of options and the algorithm doesn't like when you do new things. So this video, for example, probably not going to get a lot of views because it's not what I normally post, and YouTube doesn't like that, which is one of my biggest pet peeves with YouTube, because it makes it really hard for people to branch out and to try or do new things or even talk about other things that they enjoy, because that's not only a problem with YouTube but with society. Is people like to put us into a little box and be like, this is who you are a reader and that is it. And I'm like, that's not how people work. People have a lot of hobbies, a lot of things they enjoy, and they may only choose to put one thing on the internet. A lot of booktubers will only talk about books, but for those who do try to branch out, I feel like it's so much harder, because it's sometimes depressing, because you'll lose followers, or people will not interact as much because they don't have anything to say because they subscribe to you for this specific thing. That's why I feel like I'm definitely someone over the years that I'm someone that unfollows people on YouTube a lot. That's probably bad, but that's me on all social media. If it's not something I'm enjoying anymore and I'm not watching for the person, then sometimes I will unfollow every once in a while of people that I tried out and decided they weren't for me. The vast majority of the people that I've followed for a long period of time on YouTube are because I actually like them as a person and don't really care what the content is that they're putting out. Most of the time I do usually enjoy it, but I usually look for the person behind the channel rather than specifics of what the channel is about. I really like well-rounded individuals on the internet. I also don't believe that, going back to the booktube thing, don't believe that reading slumps are a thing. I think that you're just genuinely want to focus on something else or some other hobby in your life, or even being social when not in a pandemic, or in a pandemic figuring out new ways to be social, which is what I just talked about in my curly reading. Me and Kate, we're both extroverts. We're both very used to visiting each other every 3 months, and we're well past that because number one, Ohio is really bad right now. Number two, America's really bad right now, so we don't want to risk travel, so we're trying to get creative in new ways to be social, because we're both in socializing moods, not even just with each other but in general, and don't have a ton of people in our real life that we can go out and be with safely in the pandemic. I have one person and she has one other person outside of our households that we have brought into the COVID bubble to actually hang out with and socialize in some way so that we don't go crazy. And for us, in the last like 2 weeks, has manifested into using, like, we've tried all the platforms. We tried like Facebook FaceTime, we tried like the Messenger FaceTime, we thought about like Instagram FaceTime. We finally settled on, Kate convinced me to get a Discord and we're using that as a chatting, like texting app, because we definitely talk across all platforms. But I feel like in general, with especially this year, like the last month or so, all the social media sites are like having issues. I don't know what that's about. Like, I don't know how that's related to the pandemic, but I feel like it probably is, or the civil unrest in America, who knows. We were like not getting notifications and not able to talk as much as we wanted to, so we were on the hunt for a new solution to watching K-pop stuff, because we really got into Stray Kids, which is something that is bringing a lot of us joy, because honestly, they're a lot like Astro, which is our ultimate K-pop group. Like, we love Astro, we love their music, we love the boys, we love everything that they do, but they're not super active. So we've been trying for probably 2 years to find a group that is really active, but also has the same feel as Astro, and this is the closest we have ever come. So we've fallen head over heels and have been watching that literally every day since I got home. Like, every day I come home from work, that's pretty much what we've done, or the days that I have off. And that is not only like given us something to be excited about, but also given us the opportunity to be social with each other through that process, which I think is very important. Like, a lot of people at the beginning of the pandemic were like, okay, we got to find new ways to be social. Like, we'll do Skype dates or like Zoom dates or whatever. And that was fun for a while, but I feel like a lot of that fizzled out and people got sick of it and ended up just going out in person and not being safe COVID-wise, or as safe as you could be. And I always found that really frustrating, so I was like, no. And then I realized I was slowly like getting into a bad mental health space of not being my extroverted self and talking to people. Because even those of us that have been very, very safe about the pandemic in general over the last year, especially those of us surrounded by people who haven't been the safest they could be with the pandemic and are kind of like over it at this point, or have the pandemic fatigue is what everyone is calling it. Even those of us who have been safe and we're like pretty okay, even though we had some ups and downs last year, we were okay with like the being safe and staying home mindset. We've been in a pandemic for almost a year now, so at this point we're all kind of going a little bit crazy. So like, me and Kate have been relatively okay with the stay-at-home orders and everything, or even when it's not an order anymore, are still doing it unless we like have to go out and do something like get groceries or something like that. We have adapted, but also we need social interaction or we'll implode, or we need to do something that we really enjoy. Like in December, a lot of that was me watching Starkid. I just watched so much Starkid for like 3 weeks straight by myself, and it made me so happy. Like, happiest I've been since the beginning of this pandemic and all the other things that I dealt with last year. And then after the riots and the attack on the Capitol this past few weeks, we both felt ourselves getting to another bad mental health space. So we were like, okay, we need to do something to fix this and like find a way to be social. So we have settled on using Zoom to listen to each other and playing videos at the same time to watch related to Stray Kids. And that has been prime prime socializing perfection of us being able to talk and like almost like we're hanging out and listening to each other while also watching something that we really enjoy. Because that's honestly what we did during the summer in July when we got into I got into Infinite. She showed me them. She re-got into them. And that's what I missed, was like having someone to talk about something that you really enjoy and just want to gush about. And that's what we've settled on at this point. On the subject of books, back on the book subject rather than just socializing and hobbies, I genuinely don't think reading slumps are a thing. Like, I have not seen a single human being on BookTube not be somewhat slumpy this month because of everything that happened and the fact that we're all like realizing how long we've been in this pandemic. I feel like nobody is motivated to do anything this year, especially even with reading, and BookTube specifically is having a hard time with it. Like, I kept joking I didn't read anything in January in my January wrap-up, but honestly that seems to be the case almost all across the board. And I feel like people are getting really stressed out about it, and I was like, just go do something else that you enjoy. Like, get into TV shows, get into K-pop, get into playing games with your friends on Skype, whatever it is and whatever form that takes. As long as you are being pandemic safe and are around people that are pandemic safe, you can still have fun, and it doesn't have to go back to like, oh, everything needs to go back to normal so I can be a normal human being again and see my friends. I was like, we all want to see our friends at this point. You have to get creative or we're all just going to be in a really bad mental health space when we do finally come out of this on the other side. So yeah, no, reading specifically, I feel like all of us on BookTube went through a phase of like dystopians, and that's probably why a lot of booktubers or like readers or anybody in the humanities in general, like I always say theater people especially, are the most pandemic safe people I've ever seen, probably because their entire industry has been shut down for like almost a whole year now. But we all went through that dystopian phase of like reading a bunch of dystopians like Divergent and Hunger Games and all the really popular ones, and it's so strange now realizing that we can relate to that type of thing because we're in a literal worldwide pandemic, which has almost turned into more of a epidemic here in the US because other countries are starting to get a hold on it because they know how to wear masks. That's a rant I'm not gonna get into today. I think it really hit me and Kate, especially when we were reading, oh, where is it? We were reading Hitchers because this is set during an epidemic and it's like a flu-like virus that is causing people to like have a voice within them that is not their own voice, and it just like pops out at random times. But everybody's getting really sick. I think it's with anthrax in this, is what they think it is when the epidemic starts. And this, reading this over the summer when Kate was here, felt so surreal to be able to relate to an epidemic. And that, I think, is going to take a really interesting turn when it comes to sci-fi and dystopians in the book industry, because we haven't really seen it happen yet, or at least I haven't, of like books coming out based around a pandemic or epidemic. But I feel like they're going to be very different and they're going to change a lot after the entire world having to deal with this over the last year or so. And I feel like a year is long enough that people are actually writing the books now, so we'll end up seeing them come out at some point this year, most likely, or in the next year or two. And I think that's going to be a really interesting shift in the book industry. And also, I no longer want to like reread any of my favorite dystopians because it feels too real now and it kind of terrifies me. Which is probably why I've gone for the fluffy, romantic, contemporary things lately, if we're being honest. But yeah, I hope this discussion makes sense. I feel like I just ranted a lot, but that's kind of what I felt like doing at the camera today. But let me know if you relate to anything that I said in this video, if you agree with anything. If you disagree, please let me know. I actually would love to discuss this in the comments down below. But I hope this helps someone out. I hope that people realize that, like, you're doing okay, you're doing fine, sweetie. Like, basically, we're all in this together to an extent. You don't have to be productive, you don't have to be super motivated. We are in a literal pandemic and everyone is dealing with this in their own way. But we all still have to try to be very safe, or the pandemic is never gonna end and we're gonna be in this forever. So yeah, talk to me down below in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I will see all of you guys next time.